All right, welcome back to Now No Opportunity Wasted. Today, I have someone really special with me today who has an incredible story to share. Definitely overcome some incredible challenges. Author of the book Don't Flush, and also a candidate for U.S. Senate in Alabama. Please welcome to Now Dakari Larias. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Angelica.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on and for tossing your hat in the ring to run for office. Listen, I was going to do it. I was interested and focused on running for office. And then after I saw the circus that was going on just this past election and just getting on the inside, I just couldn't do it. So I've got to ask you, what is behind you running for office? Have you ran for office before?
I
Have
have
you held
not
office before?
I have not held office or run for office before, but I have 20 years of public service experience and finally decided it was time to be that power, not to advocate from the outside.
Not to
And what
advocate for what does that 20 years of public service look like?
Well, you know it. Ironically, it started in the Bronx. So I was on the board of Bronx Community Pride Center and actually served with Dominic Jackson. And
Oh
from
wow.
there, got into harm reduction, working at the National Harm Reduction Coalition. And then when I moved back to Alabama, joined the board of the University of Alabama, advocating for equal and cost-effective access for everyone. So that's what I've done for the last 20 years, in addition to my corporate work. And when I was falsely arrested last year, decided it was time to get in to shake things up and change the rules to create a more fair society.
Was it in Alabama where you were falsely arrested?
No, so it was actually in Michigan. So it's so funny because
Oh, that's
people,
right. That's right. It was in Michigan. Yes.
right, people have this idea about Alabama. I'm like, most of my experiences with racism and homophobia happened outside of the state, frankly. And so I was driving through the state of Michigan when the incident happened.
Wow. I actually had an incident driving through Michigan too. I was going to speak at a university there, and a cop pulled me over and totally interrogated me for no reason. Wouldn't tell me really why he pulled me over. Now, for me, as someone who's experienced something like that, I was reading that basically when you were pulled over, they were accusing you of being on some sort of substance, and even went as far as to give you all these kind of tests that ended up negative, saying that you weren't on any substances, but you still ended up arrested.
Yes, so it was crazy. It started with this moving yardstick. First, it was I was violating traffic law, which I've never done before, and I have a clean driving record. Then it was you're drunk and that they smelled something fruity, which I later realized was a homophobic slur because there was nothing in my system and I did not smell of anything fruity or of alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Tested negative in handcuffs at the jail, not even a breathalyzer. And then they still jailed me and said, well, you need to sober up for marijuana.
And how could they even assess what what was their what helped them come to the conclusion that you were on marijuana?
Well, it's funny because one of the officers, if you watch the body cam that went viral, says that they had
Yes.
500 hours of training. 500 hours, that's like an astronomical amount of training in determining sobriety. So, based upon their 500 hours of taxpayer training, they determined that I was driving under the influence. And
So it was just from their own assessment, basically.
from their assessment visually and everything else that they did throughout the night. So it was about 7 sobriety tests in the cold. This is April 10th in Michigan. So it's basically still winter. And, you know, they wanted a drug charge. In fact, when I was taken to the jailhouse, they accused me of smuggling drugs into the jailhouse by way of ingestion. So I was forced to use the restroom publicly as the trooper George Kenya yelled at me, "Don't flush," which became the name of my book.
At any point, were you thinking, or did you say, like, know? Like, did I mean? I want meaning like I wonder for you, were you feeling as if like your rights were being violated and that you knew that and objected to all the things that were going on, or did you feel like you had to go along with what they were asking?
Mm. After decades of the talk as a black person in this country, I knew that I just had to get through the situation alive, and then I would lawyer up and get justice. So I tried to be as compliant as possible. I tried to say as little as possible. The only thing I can recall saying no to was when they started asking what medications I'm on. I'm like, too much. Because I knew at that point this video was going to go viral.
This
I just knew
it's
it.
like HIPAA. They're violating
Yeah.
the HIPAA. Yeah,
I was
by
just like, we're
asking for
not
your
putting
medical
that out there.
records. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
we're not doing that. But other than that question about what medications I was taking, which was totally irrelevant, I couldn't think of anything else that I denied. But it's interesting. When the troopers were plotting to plant drugs in my vehicle, which is caught.
You can see it on the video. Oh, is it? And now that's their body cam video that's
That
catching
is
all of
their
that.
body cam video. We think
Like how stupid.
they may have released it to us by accident because they spent about 5.5 months scrubbing the body and dash cam videos. And remember, you're getting like two from each officer and then different angles. So it's very easy to get confused. And I can't really speak to their competence. So anyway, we get all of these itty bitty videos and we piece them together. And there's about a 5 minute clip. 3 minutes is the troopers searching through their vehicle for something, with the flashlight, back seat, front seat, side panel, trunk, under a box, in a box. And then one trooper comes around to the back because, again, I'm standing out in the cold. And the trooper goes, something sounding kind of like drugs. And then the other trooper responds, yeah, I don't think I have any. I had a stash in here somewhere. I don't know where it's at. He's going to refuse anyway. And then they get into the car again. I'm standing outside by myself in the cold, and they go, yeah, he's going to refuse anyway. Search warrant. So they were going back and forth about how to get into my car, so they could drop the stash. And so they just finally, one, couldn't find it, and then two, realized I probably was too sophisticated to allow them into my car.
Wow. So, I hear you when you say, as a black person who has had that conversation from our parents that know how things can easily go left and fastly go left. And at the same time, you're saying, okay, I just need to get out this situation alive. And then afterwards, lawyer up and seek justice in America.
Right.
Justice.
How naive
So,
was I?
so, so, and the reason why I say this, because I just actually finished doing a play in a run of a play in New York called Freedom Riders, and it was called 12 Angry Men and Women, and it was based off this thing where it talked about 12 different stories of police brutality, um, and there was this kind of theme throughout of justice in the sense of, and I noticed with like the character I played, Frances, who was in she testified in Congress when she was in the army, that she was raped and like all these by these white officers, but they didn't believe her, she all this kind of stuff. And and her not getting to experience justice, and us seeing over decades, over centuries, really, that this system rarely serves up justice for us. What was your confidence level at that point, and what is your confidence level maybe now of that you will actually see justice?
Oof. I love that question. I was 100% sure that I was going to see justice, and with all the evidence that I had, right? And that was even before the video. I had contemporaneous notes, I had a witness, my friend who's in the passenger side, and all of the test results that came back negative. So we started our initial complaint, we did the internal review, it was a sham. And finally, our final recourse was to sue civilly. And even with the video evidence, zero support from the local politicians all the way up to Governor Whitmer's office. Basically, everyone did this. We don't have jurisdiction, and this is a legal matter. Then we get weeks away from our day in court, and the officers invoke qualified immunity, and the judge buys it. So, case dismissed.
Qualified immunity
Yes.
for how? What do you mean? I don't qualified immunity.
Yes. So the troopers argued, and the state police, argued that they were doing their job and they were stopping me because of a traffic violation, and that I exhibited signs of being under the influence. And sometimes mistakes happen. And the judge literally said that I was suspicious for driving at 3 a.m. and that, it's very unfortunate what happened, and that I probably wish the night had gone a different way.
You know, and it's unfortunate because when you say that, I immediately think about the judgment that was placed on Jussie Smollett for being out at 3 or 4 a.m. to get Subway or whatever it was when, number one, Subway's open. Number two, there are other people there too,
Yes.
getting Subway. So, like, but somehow we should know better than to be out late at night or to do this because like even at the end of the day, like I would tell my nephew and all these kind of things, like I'm like, you're not a 17-year-old white girl. Like, you can't do the things that they do and drive late and be doing this or whatever. You're going to get stopped. But the reality is, you're an adult who can drive at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6
Yes.
a.m., and it should not be a problem. You could be coming from a booty call for all we know. Not saying that's what you was doing, but just saying, but literally, that would be your right to be coming back from doing the driver's shame, walker shame, whatever it might be, getting Subway, whatever it is that you're doing. But that is not a crime. And in this country, especially right now, even the Supreme Court is sort of going along with your skin tone being a cause for um, probable cause to be stopped and questioned and searched. So, with all that you've seen through the system, and first of all, let's even just talk about that as because that's for me, that's a fear of mine because I know what I'm supposed to do as far as to get out of this situation alive. But I also have this indignant, place in me that, and I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't know how I will always respond, especially had you ever been arrested before? Had you ever been inside a jail before?
Oh no, I had never had a negative interaction with the police before at 42 years old as a black queer man in America. So I was incredibly sheltered. I'm a Fortune 500 executive, like I'm driving a Cadillac, and unfortunately, I was not in the nicest of neighborhoods. I was dropping a friend off
Mhm.
who lived there, and I was about to go right back to my, you know,
So
executive
you
neighborhood,
went
if you
into
were.
surveillance territory.
Yes. And I just was completely oblivious to all of that. And it was the most shocking experience. And if you watch the video, you can see there are parts where I'm just like speechless. Like I just have
I
never
did.
had this interaction before.
I actually looked and I was like, I was like, I was wondering if there was pause at certain times because you just seem so stuck. Like, what is really going on here?
Yes.
And then how long were they able to hold you?
I spent a night in the jailhouse, and my driver's license was confiscated for 2.5 months.
2.5
Yes. So
months.
what does that mean? You can't fly, you can't rent a car. You're driving with this piece of paper that says basically you were caught doing a DUI. Now, I was supposed to get the results within 2 weeks, remember? 2 weeks. Fortunately, I had $100 to bail out. I didn't have to sit there for 2 weeks. I called and called and called the police force every week for months. And they said, well, we're working on your test. We're working on your test. Meanwhile, once I finally got the FOIA evidence, learned that they knew that I was negative within 10, 15 days. So it was just the cruelty of it all, right? And
And
then
cruelty is the point.
it's a point. So 2.5 months later, I get my driver's license wrapped in a piece of paper, no explanation, no call, nothing. So I'm like, I guess I passed. Yeah.
Wha- I, wow,
Mhm.
and so when you spent that night, were you by yourself? Were there other people around you? Like, as someone who the reason why I'm asking you about this experience is because, as you say, you are corporate exec. You, as a black person, quote unquote, you're doing the right thing. You're living, you are doing what you're supposed to do to not get caught up in the system. And how does that, like, what were you thinking, or how did you think we're at, as a black man who has not had any interactions with the law, that now is being treated by the system in this way? Um, what did that make, how did that make you feel, sort of, just how did that make you feel, I guess, in general? Because I guess too many of us, I think that if we are educated, if we just dress a
Yeah.
certain way, that we can avoid these kind of experiences.
It made the school to prison pipeline real for me. And when you think about almost every week, really, we hear about a black person is up for capital punishment. And it just clicked in me that how many of these people are 100% innocent? And, I was able to walk out because I had the money for the bond and I was able to lawyer up and everything, but how many other people can't do that? And I learned in this process that there are people who have been stuck in the system for months, lost their job, lost their car because of this nonsense.
So right now too, what does, from what you're seeing in this country and what you experience, talking about losing your driver's license for a couple months, we know that some folks end up dying in custody before they even see their day in court. Um, what is due process in America? Is there such thing today as due process?
We're losing it. And that's why I've authored legislation that I call the Motorist Bill of Rights. And it's a three-part, it's very simple. It says we need to agree federally across the nation on what is a probable cause to stop someone because way too many fishing expeditions are happening and people who look like us get murdered. Two, if you're doing a sobriety test, we need a scientific test that we all agree upon to determine sobriety because again it's a fishing expedition. I learned later from analysts that most of the things that I was instructed to do can't really determine sobriety anyway. Some people are off balance, some people have disabilities that impact their ability to do some of the tests, some people can't count, whatever. And then finally the release of information. So most police forces now have body and dash cam. Rather than using them for transparency, they're being weaponized against us. In my case, it took 5.5 months of fighting for the body and dash cam, $600, and then we get these redacted videos that are designed to protect the police force, not us. So we've got to release this information to the principal within 24 hours, no redactions and no cost. And that's the Motorist
So
Bill of
who's
Rights.
is there not like a third party that is in control of these videos? Is it just like up to the police to grab the videos and provide them? There's no third party sort of oversight.
You're exactly right. And so that's another piece I think that would be really interesting to the legislation is that these videos upload to a third party site because even in my legal proceedings to date, the police are sending these redacted videos to the judge. And I've had two analysts actually look at them. They said they don't even have metadata. Like, this is not evidence, this is spin.
And again, again, I bring this up because we are just had an episode a couple episodes ago on the Jussie Smollett documentary, and it's just like you say that, and again, this brings up the fact that two things happen. Just from what you just said, is one, the supposed evidence that they had of these twin brothers buying the stuff to do all of this had was on video with no metadata. It was just, and it was provided by a cop who had a history of nefarious activity in the
Yep,
Laquan McDonald
I
case.
saw that.
And so then the second thing was the video that showed, I guess, the perpetrators running across the thing with the security guard coming out of the situation is got 10 seconds redacted out of the video of where they were, where the security guard said he came out and flashed a light in the guy's face and saw that it was a white man.
Mm.
And so it was like, how how in 2025, when we understand what technology is, do we allow for that's, it's like literally you telling me you playing in my face.
Yeah,
We have body cam footage, but I'm going to give it to you with minutes and hours missing.
yeah.
So with this being the environment, I my question to you is, what gives you the confidence to think that you can get in here into that system and change things?
We have to try. We have to try. And I've always lived with the belief that truth wins ultimately. Cream rises to the top. So that was really the genesis of this campaign is if enough people, and people vote, right? It's not businesses, it's not billionaires, it's us. If enough of us realize what happened here, we can win this and we can start to make some real changes. And it's going to be a national campaign. It has to be in order to be competitive here in Alabama because we don't get that dark money, billionaire business money behind our campaign. So it's got to be everybody chipping in a little bit here and there, and that national media behind this story.
So what so speaking nationally, every state is dealing with right now a different version of fascism and all these different things happening, from ICE trying to abduct literally American citizens, folks with no criminal history or records, arrest first, ask questions later sort of situation. um we've got, here in Atlanta, we've tried to fight to stop Cop City and sort of the exorbitant budgets going to cops. Our infrastructure needs work. We need to expand Medicaid.
Right.
We have an issue with, bodily autonomy here in the States, both for trans folks as well as for, like, the mortality rate for Black women in, Georgia. And just like, again, we just had a situation where they were like forcing a woman who had already
Yes.
passed away, to carry this child. What would you say are the pressing sort of issues for folks living in Alabama right now? What are the things that you hear on the ground that people want most to be addressed?
Yes, this is a great question. So I started this campaign by saying we need leaders who listen. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months. And it is unsurprisingly kitchen table. So it's education, healthcare, the economy, and more. I was a leader on this criminal justice reform. So I think we kind of reconnected on the Alabama solution and that documentary, which is just blowing up and revealing our school to prison pipeline and then the abuses within our prison system. So that's an area that I've really been leaning on. And I've written some legislative proposals around.
So you believe in reform?
In the criminal justice system, absolutely. I believe that there's some very low hanging fruit that we can tackle, making them places where people learn job skills and can come back into society and contribute. Drug treatment. So fewer than 5% of Alabama's prisoners are actually treated for addiction. They actually get worse because many of the corrections officers deal to them. So there's a lot of work to do in that space.
So that's what. So I want to even tap on that. Like, do you believe that what you're describing is criminal behavior? To me, it sounds like a health issue.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. And I think if you have 18 hours of downtime per day, that's a perfect environment to actually get treated.
Yeah, but you know, if the environments aren't conducive for healing and because again, some people go in like I think of the sweet soul Khalif. I think it was Khalif Browder. It was a young man who ended up taking his life after he got out because just being in the
Yeah,
space changed him, did something to him, worked on his mental health, and he wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place.
yeah.
So, to me, like when I think about reforming this system and all of that, I think about what and who is criminalized in the first place. And if we have the accurate responses, to treating people who need help,
Yes.
versus locking people up into a space and now giving them a label of felon or criminal or something that they have to carry for the rest of their lives. Do you see a space in Alabama for alternative solutions to that prison, to that school to prison pipeline? Like,
Oh,
what
yes.
can do you see other solutions?
Absolutely. So, yes, thank you for that question. So, here in Birmingham, they are making mental health a really huge priority. And a lot of the work that's being done by Sheriff Mark Petway, um, as well as other individuals in the county, is siphoning off those two things: criminal activity and mental health breakdowns. And it really is going to come back to that second pillar in this campaign, ensuring that everyone has access to mental health and that we don't criminalize a health issue.
Yeah, because that was the other thing that sort of like really kind of ticked me off a little bit. I was watching the news the other day and I saw Mayor Andre Dickens on television talking about I think they were talking about in Atlanta there was a man that was arrested because his family sort of tipped off that he was going to be going to the Atlanta airport to quote unquote shoot it up.
Oh,
And so they end up arresting him there. I think it was a white man. And the immediate conversation is going to like mental health and to, funding for mental health services and what have you. But to me, I think that there's a bit of an ableist approach and piece of this conversation because I think too often people who struggle with mental health issues get sort of blamed or labeled or seen as potentially violent for those reasons
okay.
when it's not just having mental health that makes someone, you know, uh able to commit those crimes or what have you. So it's like it is there's so many other things that racism, the things that people play into this country that trans people are taking their somehow affecting their lives. I don't know why
Yes.
people are even debating about trans people
One
because I
less
don't
than
know
1% of the population.
how that even affects their grocery prices, all these other things. I have no clue. But you have people who get fixated into these spaces, whether and get into like a cult like fashion under MAGA or under evangelical or under all these different things. But yet we want to go to the conversation of mental health. And so sometimes I feel like it's an easy bar to reach for when there are real systemic things in play that even exacerbate mental health things for folks.
Sure.
And when black people are having mental health breaks, we're seen as a threat, in a way that there's so many people who have not come out alive from the cops being called on someone who's having a mental health episode instead of someone calling the doctor.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And it's so interrelated. I call it a virtuous cycle of we've got to create economic opportunity for people so that they're productive, they have readily access to mental health and education. It all works together, and the cycle is broken here in Alabama.
Do you think that in your lifetime right now and in the time that you are, you know, looking to jump into this ring of politics, do you see that marriage equality is on the docket to be attacked? How do you feel? Do you think that this regime is going to be successful at rolling back more things on their checklist of Project 2025?
I think they're about what 60 something percent through in 9 months. So they have been incredibly effective, and people should not underestimate Donald Trump. I think that ultimately on the marriage equality issue, I want to believe that's settled, and I can't believe the court would overturn that. But let's see. And I think it's a very important signal to progressives that we've
So
got to
you
call the
think that
process.
that's settled law, and they did roll back Roe versus Wade, right?
They did, but let's see what happens there. We've got to fight like hell to prevent that from happening. But I feel that for most Americans now, they've moved past that. I don't know if that's the same issue that it was 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Even for evangelicals, our Treasury Secretary is an openly gay man. Donald Trump has appointed ambassadors that are openly gay. It's not as exciting as an issue to attack anymore. Let's see cautiously.
Interesting, interesting. Because I know I just saw a black woman running. I don't know what state she's running in, but I know she was just open about her discrimination against gay couples, against discriminating against someone for being gay in employment.
Mhm.
Um, we see those attitudes across the country, really, whether they are, overt or not. It's in the policies, it's in many of the policies. It's in even them trying to remove access to prep and study for HIV, and the CDC taking a big hit. There's a lot going on in this country. And I now do you know the lay of the land as far as your opponents and the folks that you are running against? Like, has it been Republican led before in the position that you are running for?
Yes, for the most part, yes. Now, interestingly, Senator Doug Jones, a Democrat, held this very same seat and won it in 2017. So I'm trying to win it back for the Democrats. But my chief opponent on the Republican side is a man named Steve Marshall. So he has really made his campaign about anti trans issues,
Mm.
representation, bodily
So what
affirming
is your
care.
response when because this is my thing that I have had issue with. I've had issue with the fact that conservatives, the right, Republicans have doubled down, have spent so much money in attack ads on the trans community and making trans people the boogeyman.
Right.
What my issue so much from the Democrats was the deafening silence in their response. When your opponent is running ads like that across the board on anti-trans, on anti-immigrant, whatever, all the things that the stance is, what are your response to all of those things?
Yeah, I've already started attacking Steve Marshall in particular 3 times, I believe, already about this issue and speaking out. Bottom line is, we need politicians out of our bedrooms and out of our doctor's offices. These are privacy and personal health decisions. That's it. And I'm the first to say I'm not a doctor, and this is not a space that I need to be legislating, um, and neither is he. So that's really what it boils down to. And also, we're in a state that professes to be Christian, 75%. I always try to really explain it in our language as Christians and around loving our brothers and sisters and just stay out of their business.
Absolutely. Well, look, I am going to send all the energy towards you for this, because we do need more people like you in office. I commend you on having the courage and the willingness right now to see what you see, to have gone through what you have personally gone through, and to still say, I think I can get in there and make a difference. Kudos to you. I'm definitely here to support you to elevate. You're welcome back anytime here on Now to along your campaign trail to get any messages out there. Um, is there anything else that we didn't touch on about your campaign, or just something that you want to make sure that folks know about your run for office?
Well, we did discuss a little bit earlier. This is a national race to take back control of our Senate and Congress to start working for us again. So, anyone who wants to donate or volunteer, we're going to need folks phone banking coast to coast to win this. So, we're going to win it by people, right? So,
Yeah.
check out our website, dacarilariat.com, to get involved.
Awesome. Well, we will get involved. Listen, folks, especially to the LGBTQ mafia out there, I need y'all to get activated. We need somebody in on the inside, that's going to make sure that ain't nothing going to go down and we don't get our
Exactly.
rights ripped up under our feet
Yes.
here. We want to keep those things there, and we want to also continue to push for the Equality Act on who's ever in the chief executive of this country. We need them to start looking at that, as well as like reallocating our resources to the places that we need, like you spoke of, into education, into healthcare, into yeah, just restoring the country. I wouldn't say back, but we just need to, because I don't think things were ever in a great space, but this
Yeah,
country still needs a lot of restoration.
right. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you so much,
good luck out
Angelica.
there on the trail.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back.